You about our journey and how this wonderful filter came to you. Does that sound good? And so you're going to learn a few things tonight about the kinds of questions that you should probably ask about your water filter, and we're even going to do some chemistry, some all sorts of stuff. It's going to be really complicated, and it's late at night and we'll put you to sleep. Not really. Okay, so you have the first slide. Ah, there we go. Okay, it's all about water, isn't it? And it is the one thing that really every human needs in order to have good health. And, I think our instincts can tell us when water is good, right? You don't like it to be kind of murky or brown, but there's nothing better than fresh, pure water getting into your body and rehydrating you. After all, we are about 60% water, right? Next slide. Thank you. All right, so you probably don't live in a place like this, right, where you can walk right up to the waterfall and put your glass in the water and drink. I feel kind of lucky because where I come from, I don't come from there, but I'm living in the mountains of Utah right now. The water really is nice. But as you get lower and closer to sea level, the water has had further to travel, and it's not really quite so nice anymore, right? So it's coming through pipes. Next slide. And into rivers, and you're starting to see the source of your water look more and more like this, right? Even especially after a rainstorm. So what is in that water? That's the problem. I mean, is it just bad to look at? Or is there really things in the water that you really shouldn't be drinking? I think we all know the answer to that, right? And we've had plenty of explanation about the specifics of Malaysia water already today. Next slide, please. Thank you. It can look even worse, right? Next slide. So, you'd think, though, that over time, that we would learn to look after our water, right? And with the technology and everything that we have. But I guess we're kind of in a race between, the increased population and the increased demands on our infrastructure, and even sort of some things that you would consider to be modern progress. So here's a beautiful lake that has been spoiled by a mining accident, gold mining, right, that has completely ruined the water there. So our water is somewhat at risk. But no matter what the state of water in Malaysia, of course we already realized that the best solution would be, next slide, to perhaps drink it out of a bottle. Okay, let's go back, please. I don't know what's wrong with this clicker. I don't know if you can fix this or not, but it's not working. When we drink the water out of the bottle, right, that is a good solution, you would think, but it is also starting to cause an impact on our environment, isn't it? And so the next picture here shows where the tide has washed in some of these old bottles that have been disposed of. And next slide, please. Thanks. Maybe the battery's dead on the clicker. And so you see a situation like this. This is not made up, this is real. And in fact, if you can just go to the next slide, the president of Nu Skin was with his family in Hawaii over Christmas and went out to the beach in Hawaii, where the beach is normally pristine, a piece of beach about as wide as this here, where there was plastic all over the beach. And so he had his children bring some garbage bags out and start to pick up the bottles and the pieces of plastic. And this picture is about halfway through their cleanup of just this small piece of beach. So it really is becoming a problem. And Nu Skin is becoming more aware, even in our packaging and our experience of, how much of that goes to waste and what we need to do to sort of maybe be more environmentally conscious and look after the earth. And that is also something that can be contributed to by filtering your own water at home instead of having a bottle everywhere you go and buying these bottles. Okay, next slide. Thanks. So, how many people here boil their water even after it's come out of the filter? Yeah, interesting, isn't it? So you're so conscious about cleaning the water that maybe you don't even quite trust your filter. And so maybe it would be good to trust your filter so much that you feel like, when it comes out of the filter, I don't even need to boil it. And in fact, as you boil the water, what happens if you keep boiling water, right? The level of water goes down. That's what it actually does then is it concentrates anything that may not be good in the water is actually being concentrated so that it's even stronger, right? A thicker brew of whatever it is that you don't want to consume. So boiling will certainly kill the germs and make it safe to drink from that perspective. But it won't necessarily get rid of some other things like lead or some other things, pesticides, pharmaceuticals, things that make their way into your water. All right, next slide. So again, the solution is a filter that you have at your home that you can trust so that you don't even need to boil it after you filter the water. Next slide. So I want to share with you a little bit about the journey that we went on as we were tasked with this opportunity to find the perfect technology for filtering water. And, you know, before we even decided what this filter would look like, we had to decide on what it would look like from the inside, what kind of filtration media that we needed to use that would best serve us. So if you're looking for a husband or a wife, do you look for beauty or do you look in the inside?
Money.
Oh, sure. Sure, it's about the inside. What if you could have both? What if you could have beauty and content on the inside? That would be the best solution, right? But it was important enough that we looked, you know, this is what's really going to give us the pure water, not just the looks. So let's look inside. Next slide. So we built this unit from the inside out because we believe that it's important to be beautiful on the inside, not just on the outside, right? That's what really matters. A lasting relationship is all about the inside. Same is true for water. And there are so many different types of media that you can use to filter water. This is not a new technology, folks. You might even ask, why is Nu Skin doing this? Because everyone has done this before. Do you really think you're going to come up with something new? So we searched the world for the right kind of technologies. We went to trade shows for the last several years. In fact, we spent at least 2 years asking questions of experts around the world before we even sort of started to embark on some of that more heavy R&D. So we were asking experts about what's the best kind of media, what are the best order for those types of media, and what are the implications on human health and on the water flow, all of these different questions that we needed to ask about the inside of the water filter. Next slide. So lots of different types of media available, right? You can see a pleated filter there, you can see carbon, you can see granulated carbon, you know, all sorts of different technologies. Now, are they all the same? Are they all equal? Does the order matter? Do you need one stage in a filter, or do you need 2 or 3 or more? These are all the kinds of questions that we need to ask. Next slide. The other thing is, once we have decided on what kind of media to use, then how do you put that device together? And what we really wanted was a device that didn't take an engineer, next slide, to be able to put it together. We didn't want it to be so complicated, right? So it needed to be something simple now when it comes to the actual device. Next slide. Now, at this point, we were ready to start to order in units from around the world. We looked at units that we thought, yeah, that looks like a pretty good unit, let's order that. This is kind of one of the fun things that I get to do in my job, is I get to spend Dad's money to go and buy all of these fun things on the internet. Who doesn't mind doing that, huh? So this is kind of typical of what you might find when you order things. You'll get, you know, several pieces of this white pipe, and you'll get all sorts of little gadgets and connectors and some tools, and maybe a couple of washers, and hope that you put them in the right place. This is real, folks. This is the kind of thing that you would order and be expected to put together. Does that look easy to you? So the first thing that we noticed was that the user experience in water filtration is not a friendly environment. You sort of need to have a plumbing degree or something, or call a plumber, or I don't know, an engineer. Next slide. Another thing was, you know, some of these units actually look quite nice on the outside, but when it's time to change the filter, it really became quite a task. And this is a real model that we looked at, where the first thing that we had to do to replace the filter was to force the cover off, and then we were faced with these 3 different units inside, and we didn't quite know which one was which, but each of them had to be disconnected. And you see, each of those points that need to be disconnected are a potential for a leak if you don't get it right. And this is something that you have to do with your water filter for the rest of its life. Your relationship with that filter is, you're stuck with changing all of those things every single time. To the point where, if you have a unit like this, in our interviews with people, mostly, they didn't really quite know when the filter ran out, but were afraid to go and pry that lid off again. So, the filters were probably expired 5 years ago, but they weren't going to go in there again and try to change it. That's not what we wanted, right? Next slide. Here is an example of an actual product that we bought. When we opened the box, that's what we saw. Several boxes in there and in disarray with bits of tubing. How friendly is that experience? We think that user experience is really important. So every touch point that you have with a company and a product needs to be pleasant, needs to be delightful. I hope that when you call the Nu Skin office, that you are greeted with a friendly person who is very helpful, right? That's part of the user experience. Every time you receive a product from Nu Skin and you open the box, you should be delighted in how it feels, how it looks, the presentation. This is all part of the user experience, how the product works. This is really important, right? And many of you, I think, are entrepreneurs and you want that for your customers, right? Right, so we don't want this kind of thing. Now the size matters as well. How many of you have really huge kitchens? I don't see a single hand there. I guess Oprah Winfrey is not here with us today. Right? Yeah, most people have kind of fairly humble kitchen. Space matters on those shelves, right? If the kids leave the toaster out, that's kind of a disaster in our family. There's no more room on the bench, right? So we don't want something that has a huge footprint, and we don't want something to look kind of ugly either, right? We want it to look classy. We want it to look nice. Next slide. And, I don't really consider this to be classy. I think if I brought this home for water filtration, my wife would ask, why is there a motorcycle engine on my kitchen bench? Are you rebuilding the engine right now? Right? It needs to look good. It needs to look classy. Okay, next slide. Now, there's some other things. People can be quite creative. And, I applaud the person who, this is a real example. There's a wastewater issue with some types of filtration units, and this is part of sort of the inside-outside story that we're talking here. Reverse osmosis, for example, is a nice way to filter water, but many people don't realize that for every liter that you get of reverse osmosis water, there's usually somewhere between 2 and 5 liters of water that is wasted, that has to be thrown away, that is used to clean that water that you're drinking. Did you know that? And so people come up with creative solutions, and I love this. Well, why not just use that wastewater? When it's time to do the washing, just open the lid and you can use your washing in there. So I don't know what that water's like for doing washing. Maybe your clothes become a little stiff when they come out. But we hope that you don't need to be that creative. Next slide. Thanks. Okay, so how many of you have heard of alkali water? There's really quite an internet sensation. So many people that I've met said, okay, you guys are doing a water filter, right? What about alkali? Can you use alkali? Isn't that great? Have you seen the promises that they make? Right? Alkali water should give you more energy, will help you lose weight, will help you avoid certain diseases, heart disease, cancer, whatever it may be. Have you seen those claims? Very convincing. Now, do you believe them or not? Be honest. You really don't know, do you? But your friends are raving about it so much, and it's so cool that you wonder if there's some truth to it. And it's not just about the water. They're saying, okay, alkali water, that's the first step. Now you need to go on an alkali diet, right? Because you don't want your body to be acid, because it increases the possibility of all these issues. I want to explain a little bit of that to you today. And sort of because it's really time to dispel the myth about alkaline water. Do you want to learn a little bit of chemistry? Yes. All right. So I've got my whiteboard over here. Let's talk a little bit about this then. What is alkali? I'm not sure if I even know how to spell it. What does alkali mean? Do you know what acid means? Right, acid. So really strong acid, spill it on yourself, not good, right? Kind of eats your clothes or whatever. So you've got acid, and then you've got what chemists call base, but really it's the same as alkali, right? And too much alkali is really bad. That's like caustic, right? You might use it as a cleaning solution, but you don't want to get it on your hands. It burns just like acid. So, in the middle, you've got neutral, right? Now, it's described with a term called pH. Have you all heard of that? Yes. All right, what is pH? Anyone know what pH is? How do you measure pH? Is it in a color code? It's in a number, right? So pH, neutral pH is what? Do you know what number that is? 7. Yeah, okay. So you guys have done some chemistry. All right. Now, this pH scale, it's the pH scale, right? It's actually small p, big H. In chemical terms, everyone loves this. It's the negative log of the hydrogen ion concentration. The negative log of the hydrogen ion concentration. You know, that's just how the chemists write the equation, but it's really not that difficult, okay? If it's an acid, it's going to have hydrogen ions in the solution, lots of hydrogen ions. And the stronger the acid, the more concentrated the hydrogen ions. That's not so hard, right? Right? The important thing to remember, though, is it's a log scale. Now, what do I mean by a log? I mean, it's like something like this, right? Something that's a log, right? Now, a log really means sort of like multiples, tenfold multiples, right? So all you need to know is, now if I'm going towards acid, what's the next number going to be? 6, right? Now, let's say you've got 10 hydrogen ions in this neutral acid, right? In this neutral situation. When you go to pH 6, you multiply that by 10, so now you've got 100 hydrogen ions. So 6 is 10 times more acid than 7, right? And so that means that 5 is going to be 10 times more acid than 6, right? So now you've got 1,000 of those little hydrogen guys in your teaspoon of water. When you go to 4, you've got 10,000, right? You with me? Yes. When you go to acid level 3, pH 3, how many hydrogen ions in your little teaspoon? 100,000. And by the time you get to 2, you've got 1,000,000, right? 1,000,000 hydrogen ions in that itty bitty teaspoon of water. So this is like super acid, don't spill it on yourself, that's bad, right? That's what the log scale means. Right. Now, it's the same in the opposite direction, right? It's getting smaller and smaller in the hydrogen ions. So now, what is alkali water? It's somewhere between 7 and 8. So, you know, maybe you've just got 1 hydrogen ion there. So, what happens now? If you are going to have, well, what is the pH inside your tummy? That's the question. When you eat food, is your stomach got acid in it or base in it? Acid. Acid, right? Nasty acid. And it's quite strong. Do you know how strong? Do you know what the pH level is in your stomach? Sorry? 1.5 to 2. Yeah, this lady knows. Are you a nurse, physiologist, chemist, biochemist? Awesome. Yeah, it's like around here. So we're talking about, you know, a million hydrogen ions in there per itty bitty teaspoon, whatever it is. Now, do you think it's going to make the slightest bit of difference if you drink some water that is a little bit, you know, hardly any hydrogen ions in there? When you drink that water, is it going to make any difference to your tummy? No. It's like putting a grain of salt into an Olympic-sized pool. It makes no difference. Now, even if it did make a difference, you know that the body has this amazing ability to buffer itself, right? When you get hot, your body reacts by trying to cool it down. How does it do that?
Sweat.
Sweat, right? So the sweat evaporates off your skin. It's a natural cooling thing. This is called homeostasis, or the ability of your body to keep things the same. It's very important. Your body temperature is super important. If you start to get hot, overheat, then it can be life-threatening. It doesn't have to be very hot, right? Hypothermia. What if your body gets a little bit too cold? It will try to compensate, right? You'll start to shiver, whatever you need to do to stay warm. If you stay too cold for too long, what happens? Death, right? So, keeping everything the same is one of your body's main functions. Now, do you think that pH in your blood and your tissue is as important as hot and cold? You better believe it, it is. And your body has amazing chemical methods to make sure that the pH in your blood and your tissue never changes. So you can go on an alkali diet, and you know what? You may change the pH of your pee. That's right, I said pee. Urine. But you'll never change the pH of your blood and your tissue. So it's not going to affect your health if you drink a slightly alkali water. It might taste a bit different. I don't know if you like that or not. But it's time to put that to rest, right? And if there's a company that sells you a water purifier that talks about the benefits of alkali, then I would not trust that company with my water purification. Okay? Are we on the same page? Yeah. Okay, I hope we're feeling good about that. That was one slide that took like 10 minutes, but it was really fun. Thank you. All right, next slide. I'm glad we got that out of the way. So we then started to then design it. Having come across all these different technologies, the first thing was we did find out some new technologies. We found out what the best technologies were that were available. And in this water filter that we started to design, then we put all of those best technologies, the proven science technologies, together in this package. And so I'd like to talk to you a little bit about that. And how much time do I have left? Do I have a timekeeper? All right, let me know. I have 15 minutes. Thank you. It's a big sign. Love it. Okay, so we started to design this. Next slide. And here are the criteria that we put together. First, an intelligent ultrafiltration, right? Ultra, meaning that's more than microfiltration. This is very high level of filtration down to very small levels. Next is fast installation, right? We want you to be able to put this together without all the complicated mess that sometimes is required. Next slide. Easy filter replacement. Remember, we don't want 3 or 4 filters with lots of points of leaking. We don't want you to be afraid of the unit. We want you to be confident. We want it to be easy. Next. Elegant design. Because we don't want it to look like we are rebuilding the engine of my motorcycle on my kitchen bench, right? We want a small footprint because not everyone has a huge kitchen. And a closed system, right? We don't want wires and things that we have to redo every time we do the filter. And we don't really want wastewater either. Water is precious. We don't want to have to spend 5 gallons to get 1 gallon of clean water, right? So those were the criteria. And again, the user experience is super important. So let's talk then about the filter. Go ahead. This is what we produced. And next slide. This is what it looks like in your kitchen. Minimal, beautiful, classy design. What do you think of that? Does that look good in your kitchen? Yes. I think it probably looks better than the one that you have there, am I right? Yeah. So, let's look at the ultra pure i4 technology. Next slide. Let's look at the inside of the unit and show you what we designed. So first of all, there's the, if you just go back one notch, the top. Easy to remove and is a little bit translucent, so you can actually see the lights underneath, right? Those are the dimensions there. So I encourage you to write down those dimensions because you're going to go home to your kitchen and measure exactly where it's going to go, right? 200 millimeters by 130 millimeters. Now, the first thing that you notice when you unpack it is that from the rear of the unit, you can see, next, that there's no assembly required there. It's a 3-in-1 cable that is already attached to the unit, and it's permanently attached there, so there's no possibility of leaking or getting it connected wrong. And the next, the power cable is attached there as well to that outlet plug. So there's no problem mixing up water and electricity, right? Completely safe and all done for you. Next slide. This, I think, is one of the highlights of the unit. As we looked and went to the different trade shows around the world and around America to try to find the perfect diverter. Now, do you know what this is, this part? This is the part, of course, that attaches to your faucet. And so this is the part where you decide, do I want tap water or do I want filtered water? And you need to press a button. So I have to maybe explain that, because what's available right now, usually it's some kind of a clunky tap or lever or something. Hopefully you don't have to get a wrench out to do it, but it's not easy sometimes, right? And you want something that looks beautiful and that is really easily functional. And you can't quite see it from here, but this it's kind of an electronic thing, so you don't have to press it even very hard. You just touch it with your finger and it will change. Right? So it's super nice. We did not see this on any units that we looked at. This was a first for us, and it was necessary for us to get this unit at all costs. Alright, next slide. Right, now, the hardest part about a filter often is, how do I attach the filter, to my faucet? And so you need to have a kit that is self-contained, because I don't want to get my beautiful water filter and I'm excited about opening the box, and then I find out that there's something that I need that is not in the box, right? You need to be able to do it easily, and we have designed this so that you have 6 choices. One of these adapters will fit your faucet, never fails. You just find out which is the right adapter, and then you can attach it to your faucet. And the next thing is completely easy, is that you're just going to grab this and snap it onto that adapter. Right, so you're nearly there, and the next step really is just attaching the power, and your unit is done. Right, so easy, simple user experience. Next slide. So let's talk about the power of 3 inside the filter unit itself, right? So that's the design. It's beautiful, it's easy. Does it actually work? What is the technology that we've put inside? Next slide. So, well, actually I didn't quite get there, did I? There's a filter inside. This is it here. And it's really as easy as 1, 2, right? You just slide it in and do a quarter turn, and there's your filter, it's in. And so every time you need to change the filter, you just wait for that little orange light to go on and tells you that it's time for the filter to be replaced, usually about a year for an average family. Then what do? I'm going to take this out and put in the new one. How easy is that? Yes. All right, next slide. Yeah, no plumbing, no tools. Okay, let's move along. Okay, here's what's inside. Okay, you have a 4-stage filter. And in this one filter here, 3 of those stages exist, right? So, the first thing, next slide, is there's a pre-filter. Next, right? It's a polypropylene pleated filter, and this is really the first stage. This is where the water from your faucet first meets the filter. And this is it's in a pleated shape, so it has a really big surface area, and it's able to sort of filter out the worst of things before it gets to the heart of the filter. Now the next part is the compressed carbon block. Now carbon, is really important, because carbon has amazing qualities if it's the right kind of carbon. If it's activated carbon, and it's usually made from coconut husks, turned to carbon, and then treated a certain way with high pressure steam, gives it a huge surface area. So 3 grams, do you know how much 3 grams is? It's about a teaspoon, a little bit less. 3 grams of this black magic stuff, black magic, actually has a surface area about the same as a football field. Wow. Is that not amazing? So 1 kilogram is about 2 million square meters. It's amazing how much surface area this has. And water pushing through this all of the bad stuff in the water is extracted. The odor, the chemicals, the chlorine, the lead, the bacteria, the viruses, the cysts, you name it. This has amazing qualities because these pores are so small and actually able to neutralize and react, right? And hold so much because of the huge surface area. But there are some traps for young players. Okay, a lot of filters have what is called a granulated carbon, right? So just think of thick sort of grains of sand. So they make a granulated active carbon and they pour it in, and then they use that to filter. And that works really quite well. But it is known to have some problems, and it's called channeling. Water always finds the easiest path. You know that, right? And so you get what's called channeling, where the water doesn't actually go through all of the granules, but actually finds its way so that it doesn't have to get filtered. And that will always be a part of a granulated filter. So the next thing then is you need to have a carbon block. And with a carbon block, there are two ways of doing that. The first way is called an extruded carbon block, where you mix it with water and some binders, and then you push it through holes in a machine, and then you shape it to size. Right? Now, these are the things that we learned along the way. The extruded carbon block is not as good as the gold standard, which is the compressed carbon block, where you have a mold and using high pressure, you push the carbon into the mold. That's a much more consistent and a better filtering block. And that's the kind that we use in this I4 technology. Okay, next slide. This is kind of cool and unique that you will not find in a benchtop filter, water filter at all. Okay, this is the PES membrane. Let's have a close-up of that. Next slide. The PES membrane, I'll give that to you in a minute. Sorry, fourth stage, of course, is the light, the UV light. Okay, and that's in this unit right here. And it's a cold cathode UV ray that doesn't need to be replaced, right, for the life of the unit. Now, this is kind of a unique thing, and it's a nice thing. If anything gets through, which it won't, but if it does, right, any bacteria, everything has DNA, and the UV light will completely destroy that, right? So, okay, let's look at a little bit more. I wanted to share with you just in a little more detail. There's the polypropylene pleated pre-filter. Let's just call it P3 for short, shall we? The next stage, the carbon block, and you know now, next, that not all carbon is the same, that you need to have a compressed carbon block, right? So if your friend has a filter, ask him, is it granulated carbon, is it compressed carbon, or extruded? Because really compressed is the way that you need to go. I bet they don't even know. And finally, the PES membrane. Now this is a really cool technology that we actually stole from the reverse osmosis concept. Okay, so this is very unique for ours. Let's have a close-up here. It has these bands that have very, very, very tiny pores in them. And so we had to increase the surface area by making these strands that look a little bit like the loops that are found in your kidneys, right? That are really, really good at filtering. And let's have a look at a cross-section of that. You find a huge surface area, very, very small pore size, and this is really where the ultrafiltration comes in. So after that, a magic of the carbon block, now it has to go through this barrier before it finally gets out of the filter and into your glass. Okay, this is amazing technology. And the order of this technology really does make the machine. Next slide. Right, and there's the ultraviolet, the fourth stage. So there is really why we call it. Do you know why we call it I4? Yeah? Okay. So let's talk about one more thing, a little bit more science before we go. How's my time, timekeeper? I've got 5 minutes. Perfect. All right. Next slide. I want to talk to you about logs again. I know. Who'd have thought we talk about logs when it comes to water filtration? So you've learned about logs when it comes to pH. Let's learn about logs when it comes to reducing the bacteria, the viruses, whatever it might be in your drinking water, okay? Now what is a log again? It's really just kind of a 10-fold reduction or increase, right? So let's look at logs here. We start with, we're calling it CFUs. What that means is a colony forming unit, or basically it's a way to measure each bacteria that might be in the original water. Let's say that we start with 1 million, right? Now if you're going to knock it down 1 log, then what's it going to go to? You're going to drop 1 zero off that, so that's 100,000, right? So we really don't want 100,000 bacteria in our unit, right? There's 1 log, 100,000. How many bacteria, what is acceptable to you once we've filtered your water? what is acceptable in terms of a log reduction in bacteria. Shall we just go to 2 logs? At 2 logs, we've got 10,000 bacteria. Is that okay? 2 logs is 99%. It's not bad, right? Okay, let's go to 99.9%. That's 3 logs. Okay, you've got 1,000 bacteria now that are left behind. Is that okay? You guys are really fussy, aren't you? All right, let's go to a 4 log reduction. Now you've just got 100 bacteria in there. You can settle for 100 bacteria, surely? All right, so at what point, how many logs reduction do we have to go before we have essentially, statistically, 0 microbes and bacteria or whatever it might be, cysts left in your water? It's 6 logs, right? And 6 logs is 99.9999% reduction, right, of the load that's in the water. And that is the gold standard. That is what every water filter should achieve. Do we achieve it with this filter? That's the question. Because we built this based on looking at all of the best technologies that we could find in the right order. We put it in a sleek package that's going to look beautiful in your kitchen, but the real test comes when you have to do the test to find out what the log reduction is, and we find that it exceeds 6 logs. So we're there, right? I think that deserves a round of applause, don't you? Thank you. All right, we're nearly there. I've got a couple of videos and stuff that I want to show you. Let's go to the next one, next slide. Okay, now here's just a list of all of the things that we tested that we know that the filter can deal with. You'll notice endotoxins, bacterial, virus, cysts, all sorts of things. Particulates of certain sizes were tested, chemical reduction, spores, turbidity. You can see a check mark next to all of those things. But what's going on with the one at the top there? That one didn't work. Dissolved salts. Oh, okay, that's good, right? Yeah, those dissolved salts, things like calcium, magnesium, things that are in your water, those are good for you. And those actually help make the water taste good. So you don't want to get rid of those. So the filter is working really nicely. Let's look at a couple of videos that show how some of these things work. We're going to look at turbidity, and then we're going to look at chlorine. Okay, first video, please. Some pretty nasty water. I don't know if you would want to drink that. Right? Who's thirsty? Which one are you going to drink? You don't need to boil that water that just came out of the filter, okay? It's ready to drink. Okay, now, you could see very dramatically how it changed that. It took the turbidity out of the water. But, there are things in the water that you can't see that still are not necessarily good for you. And one of them is chlorine. Now, chlorine is wonderful for cleaning swimming pools, right? And hot tubs. But I don't know if I would drink the swimming pool water or the hot tub water, right? And it's not bad, it's not going to hurt you too bad to drink it, but it doesn't taste good, and it does have an impact on your body, right? For example, what we are learning, one of the cutting edge areas of science right now, is the impact that the friendly microbes have that are in your body on your whole gastrointestinal tract, right? We have this symbiotic relationship with the friendly bacteria in the GI tract. And it turns out that drinking water that still has chlorine in it can actually impact that healthy population of bacteria that are in your GI tract. So that's another thing, for taste and also for your health. Once chlorine has done its job, maybe it's a good idea to get it out of there. So this next video will show you just quickly a test that we can do to show, does the i4 Ultra Pure technology remove chlorine from your water at the tap? Let's look at the next video. we're just going to test the normal tap water right now. This is an indicator that will turn pink if there's any chlorine in the water. Okay, that's chlorine in the water. That's very typical of Malaysia tap water. Now we're going to touch the filtration side.